Cheng, you've used the word responsibility. I've heard Alex using the term consideration, be considerate to your readers. Both imply a certain self-restraint, as in, you don't just automatically say the first thing that occurs to you in your head. But that kind of self-restraint, on the one hand, you could call it exercising editorial judgment, something good, or it could be called self-censorship, not necessarily something good. I assume you both try to do the former, exercise judgment, but try to avoid self-censorship. How do you draw the line, and how does this work in practice?
Well, I'm not sure about how I categorize it. For us as practitioners, I think it's pretty much largely common sense to try actively not to fall foul of laws like defamation, sedition. So regardless of what you call it, I think the reality is that if there are certain OB markers you can't cross, for me, I think good grounding in substantive law, which Dr. Tan will be explaining later on, is important to know what you can and cannot do, what lines you can and cannot cross. And I think even within those boundaries, there's a lot of space for sharp, biting, critical opinion. And I think the nature of the blogosphere now is a good example of that. So self-censorship, a minimum. I think I've only rejected less than 5 pieces for publication for reasons that they might potentially be seditious or defamatory.
Oh, when I used the word consideration, it was nothing at all like that. I was actually talking about the style of writing. Like, Singaporeans, when we speak, we rattle off our acronyms, HDB, CPF, GIC, all that kind of thing. But I'm saying that when you're reaching an audience who are not in your inner circle, they may not necessarily understand the background and context. So now, when I began to realize that I'm reaching people who are not really on the same wavelength as me or in the same circles as I travel, then I would never just say HDB. I would say Housing and Development Board, comma, open, parenthesis, HDB, close parenthesis. Or if I write something about some Central Asian state, I would not say, in the Parliament building of Astana. I would say in the Parliament building of Astana, comma, the capital of Kazakhstan, comma, and so on. That's what I mean by consideration. You are reaching people who are not necessarily regular readers, who are not necessarily in that same area. But coming to Cherian's point about judgment, editorial judgment, and so forth. Yeah, I suppose when you are writing for other people and not just for yourself or your mother, you have to be careful that the person that you are dissing might well be your reader. Here you go dissing Go Choktown, and hopefully you want Go Choktown to read also, right? So, sorry, I was a bit busy and I'm a bit behind time. So you can be careful not to completely put off your reader altogether by dissing them, but sometimes it gives you pleasure to diss them anyway, so let's go ahead and do it.
I guess the lesson there is, be conscious of what your intention is, right? Sometimes it can be fun to insult someone and make them cringe, and if that's the objective, why not? But if you are trying to persuade them, then that's a different story. Let me just share with you very briefly a recent example from my own blogging. I wrote a piece actually for the Online Citizen that subsequently came out in Straits Times as well on the Aware saga. And I was very conscious of the fact that there wouldn't be much point adding to polarization in this debate, and it would be great if I could get sympathizers of the new guard to sort of open their minds to what I was saying. And I set myself this challenge: would it be possible to write this column without actually even using the word Christian? Right? Not even, and so nobody could accuse me of targeting a particular religion. And I did it, right? I wrote the whole column. I don't think even Bill noticed that I did not even identify a religion. I just said these forces, and New Guard, and so on. Right? And it was, for me, there was a very simple example of, I think, self-restraint on my part, because it's so easy to, go down labeling, attract labeling, and as Alex said, unintentionally stepping on people's toes, because then they see themselves as precisely that group that you're trying to label and diss. So it requires a bit of discipline as a writer to take those steps, but occasionally it is worth it. Okay, next question on anonymity. Both of you have chosen not to hide your identities. When is it a good idea for a blogger to remain anonymous, and when should you come out into the open? Alex?
I never faced that question, because by the time the internet revolution came about, there was already a thick file on me at the Internal Security Department. So there was no point being anonymous. And it wouldn't serve my activism, because I was an activist first before I began to write, to be anonymous. Because sometimes when you want to persuade people, you have to do everything possible to bolster your credibility. You can't persuade people if you don't have credibility. But if you take the question the other way, supposing I were to start blogging now, today, and I had to make a fresh decision, would I blog anonymously? Would I blog with my name and face and a pet dog, pet dog picture out there? The answer would still be no. I don't see the point of being anonymous. What could you possibly get from it? What are you trying to hide that's really so important to hide? And frankly, by not being anonymous, you get invited to forums like this. If you're anonymous, you wouldn't know who to send the invitation to. And you go places. And so I think it's quite an obvious decision, for me at least.
I think that's pretty interesting, and for people who blog anonymously, the question, I think the point really would be if they want to find out who you are, they can. But I can think of two very practical situations where someone might want to blog anonymously or pseudonymously. One, if you're in the civil service or if your workplace has strict guidelines on private blogging. Two, for purely personal reasons. One of my friends is a lesbian activist. She's not out to her parents yet, so she feels she feels the need to use a pseudonym when she's maintaining her website. So I think that's legitimate.
Don't see there's an ethical question there.
Mm.
If you are in a civil service and there are strict guidelines about what you can blog and what you cannot blog about, then you're saying it's legitimate to blog anonymously, pseudonymously? Are you implying that, yeah, it's okay if you did that and you talk about your work? Because if there are strict guidelines, then you shouldn't be blogging about it at all, whether pseudonymously or under your own name.
Yeah, I think in the most obvious circumstances that would be unethical. But the way some of these guidelines are framed, they're quite broad. So for instance, if I'm not wrong, civil servants aren't supposed to comment on politics. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. That's my understanding.
Fair enough. So they shouldn't comment anonymously either.
I suspect some of this is done with a sort of a wink and a nod, right? I mean, as in, it could well be that the employee's boss doesn't even know and doesn't really mind it, as long as there is that arm's length relationship that is protected with anonymity, right? So as long as you don't identify yourself, or so easily identify yourself to others, other than the ISD who knows everything anyway, right? As long as it's not in your face. You're not blogging to the public in a way that announces that you're a civil servant or that your circle recognizes that you're a civil servant. Maybe even employers are okay with that.
I think you can interpret the guidelines to mean that you can talk about everything else except the job or on commenting on your employer, who is the government. So if that is the case, then there's really no need to be anonymous. I mean, you You can still be who you are, and you talk about your favorite restaurants and all that, and still identify yourself as a civil servant. I don't see what the big problem is. You know, I've been blogging like